Hello, welcome to David's Den. I'm David and I make videos about Stephen King, his novels, his short stories, and any adaptations that were made for film or television. Today we are up to the 7th episode of Strawberry Spring, the podcast, on our night shift movie-ish vlogs, because this adaptation isn't a movie, it's a podcast, the first ever podcast of a Stephen King work. And if you aren't caught up yet, make sure that you check out those previous videos on episodes 1 through 6. Otherwise, I'll assume that you're caught up. Spoiler warning for all things Strawberry Spring, the podcast, up through episode 7, and all things Strawberry Spring, the short story, through the end, because we'll be comparing the two and how they line up. Okay, here we go. Episode 7 is titled Damaged Goods, and while I have problems with some of these titles, I think that one's pretty good. I would just subtitle it, All the Threads Are Coming Together. It's mostly young Henry in the orphanage and the 1976 timeline. Everything since episode 5, we're getting a lot more embellishment of things that don't correlate directly to the short story because it's the past and the present timeline, and all we get is the 68, which is also the past timeline. You understand what I'm saying? Orphanage, college, adult. This is the short story. We're mostly here and here. So they're free to embellish, and I think they're doing a great job. We pick up the story right where we left off. We are in Chief Spencer's office with Henry and Anne. They just found Michelle? Why did I just drop the name? They just found Marcia Curran's head, and the parents are arriving. Henry is recognizing them as parents that came to the orphanage and decided that they wanted a younger child, not a 15-year-old Henry. And he notes the irony of, if you had chosen to adopt me, you wouldn't be suffering any grief right now. You would have a child that's alive and a grandchild on the way. And then he feels bitter. He feels rejected. Remember, we talked about in the last episode, he had this realization of, I didn't feel rejected back then, but a wave of rejection washes over me now. Here in this episode, we harken back to that when he says they wouldn't have to live with their grief, and I wouldn't have had to fend for myself in an orphanage. Mrs. Curran is, of course, upset. Her daughter has been murdered, and she comes out with all of the things we are supposed to be wondering. Is it Spring-Heeled Jack? Is this man back? Why? Why my daughter? Why after all these years? What the writing is doing is priming us for the final 2 episodes. As we get to the climax and the denouement of the story, why now? They're trying to console the Currans. Anne's like, we're going to do all we can. And Chief Spencer's like, we have the latest forensics. Of course, it's 1976, not the forensics we're probably thinking of. We have a psychological profile on this guy now. He has a dissociative personality disorder. Henry? Check. He suffered a childhood trauma. Henry? Check. OCD? Why mention that? Unless they were just trying to round out this profile with other things for us, the listener. Henry hasn't shown any signs of OCD. They could have talked about possibly having blackouts or losing time, something that we know Henry goes through, something that we've seen in the past 6-7 episodes. So I thought the OCD thing was a little bit of a stretch. It kind of caught my ear and went, really? OCD? But then we have Henry's bitter voiceover. I should have told them, don't despair. There's plenty of other orphans to go around. Smash cut, Kevin as a child on the radio in the orphanage, on his little transistor radio. And he's giving the news and he's talking about Kennedy launching the rocket and the Yankees in the 1961 World Series. So it's kind of a cute adolescent thing that also lets us know that we've suddenly changed time. This one was a little bit more abrupt. We talked about those smooth, everything's the lines kind of blurring on time in the last episode and how these transitions happen. This one was a little coarser because you had that harsh static sound come in, but he's giving the news, and then the next item is, in other news, Henry Denton has moved into the new Sharon home for boys. No one's going to adopt him. Why would they? He's a 15-year-old boy with psychological issues. He sustained head injuries. His emotional scars run deep. Isn't that right, Henry? And Henry goes, huh? What? Is this the first time that he hears Kevin? In the last episode, we had that brief cut in. Kevin saying, I moved into the new Sharon home for boys. And then Henry's voiceover comes in as the radio cuts out. And this actually starts with him saying, I fixed the band on my radio. So it seems like we had a hint of a, I'm coming in. No, not quite yet. And now this is the moment that Henry's like, huh? Kevin, are you talking to me through the radio?
Why do people think that I'm you?
Love it. Henry gets the news from the headmaster, who's actually a very sweet man. He goes door to door. He has a father and son chat with every single boy to say, you know, the Currans chose not to go with you, to go somewhere else for their adoption. rather than just kind of blanketly telling everyone. So I thought that was a nice touch. It humanized one of these minor characters that could have just been, a throwaway, a prop, if you will, to facilitate the storyline. Back to Chief Spencer's office, and as they're leaving, Mrs. Curran recognizes him. And she accidentally gives the wrong last name. She remembers the name Henry, but she gives the wrong last name. And he's like, nope, sorry, it wasn't me. Maybe another boy at the orphanage. So he knows it was him, but he plays it off in front of the Currans. Chief Spencer comes in. Let's go down and see John Dancy. He was just brought in. And I love the use of sound here. The strings come in under it. It's like a bum, 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 bum. They get louder and more music comes in. The door opens and you get the phones ringing and the typing and the sounds of the police station. And then Anne comes in. Where are we going? The detention cells are in the basement. Oh, this great build, and then we have of sound and tension that gets us to, we're also going down into a dungeon-like atmosphere. Without the visuals, I feel like I know where I am. On the way there, we have in voiceover from Henry that Anne is noticing there's a change in my demeanor. I nod to her to put her at ease. I don't know if it does. And I started thinking, holy shit, is Kevin about to come out like while he's at this police station? Oh my God. Edge of your seat tension. They get down to see John Dancy. He's scared. He is obviously this PTSD riddled man from Vietnam. By the end of this, he's saying, I killed, not what you thought, but I killed because they made me. There were orders for me to kill. I killed. It was Vietnam, man. He's all beaten and bloody because the police officers said he was resisting arrest. And it turns out that Chief Spencer himself was interrogating him, and maybe Chief Spencer's a little too close to this investigation considering his daughter was one of the victims in 1968, and now Marcia Curran's head was just found in the same place that his daughter's head was found. Maybe you're not the one that should be interrogating the suspect? Just saying, Mr. Police Officer. But Chief Spencer is adamant, I'm going to make sure that you and Almalara, I keep going to say Alamara and it's Almalara. I'm going to make sure that you and Amalara fry for this. And Anne's like, you need to release him. You have no evidence to keep him in custody. But of course, this is after we get the title of the episode in one of those, wink, wink, if you've been paying attention to the titles. Because Henry says, this guy didn't do it. He's clearly damaged goods. But the title is really referring to Henry being damaged goods, because we're getting his psychological profile and history at the orphanage. This is just a mirroring of how broken Henry is inside, despite how well he's held it together. That's what John Dancy symbolizes. Beautiful piece of writing here. Henry and Anne leave the police station. He's walking her to her car. He's like, go get some rest. I have to go home to my pregnant wife. She's going to give birth any day now, which, interestingly, right now is the only sense we've had at all of how pregnant she is. Well, I mean, you can't be a little or a lot pregnant. If you're pregnant, you're pregnant. Earlier, I think the first episode that the baby was kicking, but that could be any time past the first few months, right? Here we finally get, she's going to give birth any day now, so she's 9 months pregnant, we're to assume. And Anne says, I hate this fog. I know, we haven't had fog like this since voiceover, since the last time 5 women were murdered, since Spring Hill Jack got away, since the last time I had a migraine. So if you hadn't pieced it together from knowing the short story or from the clues given to you up till now, this, the way that it's emphasized, is not overdone. It's perfectly timed to make all the clues come together for you. The migraines, the fog, it all works together, and Henry is our cause. We just keep getting pointed more and more in that direction as we go. It's the tease, and I feel like some other shoe is going to drop to prove us wrong. And if I'm right about that, it better be fucking good or this will be a letdown. If I'm not right about that, this is a great setup for the reveal, and the reveal better be something spectacular because we know it's coming. Anne drives away, and as Henry's staring at the blurry taillights and the fog, he starts feeling dizzy. He starts feeling pressure in his head. He says, like an old friend coming to visit when you don't want them to. Kevin arising? Maybe? He says he feels pressure in his head like a tea kettle where the steam has nowhere to go. I love that imagery. We know exactly that pressure, especially if you've ever had a migraine. Someone calls out, Henry Denton, is that you? What's going on? I'm feeling dizzy. Your wife is going into labor. You have to get home. Holy shit. Henry starts fumbling for his keys and he's running to his car. He sees the shadow man by a tree. Right as he's thinking, tonight, why tonight, all the ghosts of my past. Anne has come back, Spring-Heeled Jack has come back, the Currans have come back, and now the shadow ghost has come back. Remember the one that he thought back when he was a child looked like his dad. And in the voiceover, Henry says, why now? Echoing our questions, echoing Mrs. Curran from earlier in the episode, from literally the situation he just left in this timeline. My head hurts. I haven't had a migraine like this since the first time the killings happened. Since the first time Spring-Heeled Jack showed up. Now we have a direct, in one sentence or line of dialogue, correlation between the migraines and Spring-Heeled Jack. Then he recognizes the shadow as his father. You're alive? Boom. He faints. Sudden flashback to his childhood. Dad is there fighting with mom, saying they're my boys. I want them. You can't keep them from me. And mom saying, get out of here. The army called me and told me what you did. You killed 5 women and then went AWOL. Oh my God. 5 women and Spring-Heeled Jack stopped in 1968. Now we're getting that Henry's father went AWOL, and he's saying, no, I was ordered to do it. No, dude, the army said that you went ape on a village and killed civilians. His little brother is there and scared, saying, is he gonna hurt mom? Mom gets on the phone, tries to call the police. Dad hits her. Thud. Was it Henry? Was it mom? What exactly happened? Mom saying, get the keys, we have to get out of here before he gets up. And we get from the ground, oh, Henry, what did you do to me? Okay, so Henry stood up for his mother. He protected his brother. He knocked his father out. Mom succeeds in getting them all into the car. Dad gets into the other car, starts chasing him. Boom, the accident happens. Holy shit. Not the context that I thought. We had been given to believe that Henry's dad had died in Korea. So now the question to ask is, which reality are we to believe? Which one is in his head and which one is real? I think that this memory of dad is the one that's real, especially with the inspiration of the 5 women for Spring-Heeled Jack to kill 5 women and then go away, and the car accident that happened in the fog, which, because they say it's March, we're to assume is another Strawberry Spring 8 to 10 years earlier, right? He'd be graduating college. But this full story is so satisfying and not at all what I expected. But we're not done yet. Remember, the flashbacks that we got before of the accident were him, mom, and passing out on the side of the road, and then kind of waking up when the paramedic says, this one's alive. Here, dad comes out for him. Well, I always said women didn't know how to drive, and your mother's no exception. Stay away from her. I hope you're happy now. Mom, Junior, why can't they give this kid a f***ing name? You've given all the other made-up characters names. You've reappropriated names from the short story in other ways. Why do we just leave this kid Junior? I mean, I get it. Maybe it's just what they call him. There's no need for us to know his real name. But it bothers me. But right after that, we immediately cut to commercial. And it's a great break in terms of where they put it for the suspense, because we're left wondering, is this what's real? What happens next? Did dad go and kill them? Did the accident kill them? What exactly happened? When did he faint during all of this? Did he watch his father kill his mother and brother? What happened? Instead, we're listening to a commercial. I hate fucking commercials, but it was a great way to utilize the need for breaking the story where they did. We come back and we get someone saying, Henry, can you hear me? Wake up. Oh, it's his dad. We're back in 1976. It's another smooth, blurred lines transition of time because we think that it's somebody waking up child Henry on the side of the road, but it's not. It's his dad waking him up in 1976 where he just fainted. Henry saying, it is you. You chased us and you killed them. I thought you were dead. My question is this his psychosis? Because this Shadow Man has always been a ghost before. So is this a psychosis where he's imagining that his dad is alive, or is his dad really there. But this dad ghost figure is like, let's get in the car where it's warm. We'll talk about it. What the f***, Dad? It's been 15 years. Where have you been? And the music is building, and there's this almost low to overpowering sound. And then suddenly, what are you doing? What you taught me. Slash sounds that we've gotten with every other murder that we've heard. The ching ching of the knife. What happened? Did Henry get sliced up? Did Henry slice up the Shadow Man? Is there a Shadow Man? Was it a real person? A car screeches out. So we're assuming that the dad shadow figure or Henry, whichever one wasn't sliced up, got into the car, sped off. Chief Spencer's coming over. It's not said directly, but I think it's Spencer from The Voice. And he just says, Henry, I need an ambulance in the parking lot now. So he's probably like calling into his radio. There wasn't a chink chink sound effect or something. So I'm a little unclear about exactly who he was yelling to. But we still don't know who it is because he says Henry with a question mark, which could mean the person lying there is Henry, or the person driving off is Henry, and Chief Spencer's going, Henry? Looks at the other body, get me an ambulance. So it's a little confusing. The radio suddenly turns on. It's Kevin. Okay, so Henry's the one driving away in the car. So that means there was a real person there. And if seeing his father is only a psychosis, did he just kill Anne Bray? Maybe she didn't actually leave. As we go into the 8th episode, maybe they know Henry's the killer now. I really don't know what's going on in terms of what's real and what's not, and I'm here for it. But the radio cuts in, and it's Kevin saying it's another nice, beautiful strawberry spring. You know what that means, don't you, Henry? Spring break is almost here. And while they haven't mentioned school being ended early for spring break at New Sharon in the podcast, I think that's a nice little nod to the short story where that does happen after Marcia Curran's death. But Kevin says on the radio, tomorrow is April Fool's. It marks exactly 8 years to the day that Spring Heel Jack disappeared into the fog. Let's get that right. As I look down at my notes, he disappeared into the fog, which is actually very resonant and poignant and something I should have said and now want to quote accurately. But Henry's yelling at the radio, shut up! The radio speaks back, I can't, Henry. I'm here for you. I've always been here for you. It's so creepy. And it cuts to a Kevin radio montage. We get a shh, this is Kevin as a kid. And then shh, this is the Kevin college radio. Shh, Henry, get home. Rachel is in labor. So he gets home. Rachel is upstairs. He gets her. They get into the car. He's speeding to the hospital and the car fucking crashes. I love all these different tie-ins, and all of this came from the minds of the creators. We don't get a car accident background or any sort of trauma in the short story. All we get is that last page that tells us, you know what, I think it's me. There's a break here and I don't know what it is. We get the protagonist Henry realizing it on the very last page of the short story. And not really any clues unless you're paying attention to when his migraines happen, which there's no reason to. This car accident backstory and his whole family, it doesn't exist. And I think it's very compelling. I can't wait to see how it ends. But before it ends, we have to get through the end of this episode, and we're right there. Kevin's voice comes in. Wake up, Henry. Wake up. What happened? We happened. Look at Rachel over there. Put her out of her misery, just like you did to Mom. What? So now suddenly we get, no, maybe Dad didn't kill Mom after the car accident. Maybe Henry killed Mom along with his psychosis Kevin. But we heard Kevin come to being at the orphanage, which happens after he gets out of the hospital, not before the car accident. And Henry's going, who are you? You don't remember? Don't worry. It'll come back to you. Really? You don't remember me? It's me, Kevin. I'm your brother. So, did his brother really die? and now he's being incorporated into the dissociative personality disorder, the delusion that he's having with the radio and the voices that he's hearing, the schizophrenia element. Is that why he's seeing his dad? Is that also a mental illness? Or maybe, since Anne saw him in that other episode, since Kevin came out of the headmaster's office, since he helped him tie a tie, maybe Kevin actually is real and has been stalking and following him, though? And why wouldn't he recognize his own brother? If they went to different orphanages, if they got split up after the accident, but the doctor told him that his brother was dead. So I think it's the psychosis. What is real and what is not is blurring, just like the transitions. The format of the podcast itself is changing to reflect the story. It's brilliant. I'm really enjoying this much more than I thought I would when I listened to the first few episodes. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this. There's only one more movie-ish vlog for the Strawberry Spring podcast. Next week will be the next night shift reading vlog, and then we'll be getting back to the movie vlogs. Click like, share, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any of those videos or anything else that you might want to see coming up in the publication order Stephen King readathon. Hitting those buttons is a very little thing from you, but it really helps out the channel a lot. And if you would like to follow me along social media or support the channel on Patreon, all of those links are down below in the description. And I will see you guys next time.